By now you've installed the batteries and are ready to break in your TNX engine. Because of the importance of break-in, a few settings must be checked to ensure proper operation. Turn on the transmitter first, followed by the receiver switch when starting. With the TNX switched on, we can check the steering and the throttle trim. Move the steering wheel left and right to confirm correct steering direction and operation. Push and pull the throttle trigger to check for throttle and brake operation. The steering and throttle trim positions at neutral must also be checked. To adjust the steering trim, rotate the knob marked steering trim to center the tires. The tire should point straight ahead when the steering wheel is at center. This is done visually and may need fine-tuning later during the first tank of fuel. To adjust the throttle, first remove the air filter. With the throttle trigger in neutral, rotate the knob marked throttle trim to position the carburetor arm 90 degrees with the throttle servo. This puts the servo arm in the neutral position. Once the arm is in neutral, look into the carburetor to make sure the carburetor barrel is open no more than 1 mm. The carburetor barrel at neutral determines the idle speed of the engine. If the carburetor barrel is open more than 1 mm at neutral, the idle speed can be too fast, causing the TNX to move when the throttle trigger is at neutral. And if the opening is too small, the idle will be too slow and the TNX can stall when the trigger is at neutral. If the carburetor barrel is not set to roughly 1 mm at neutral, loosen the outside throttle locking collar using the supplied 1.5 mm Allen wrench. Next, find the idle adjustment screw located on the back right-hand side of the carburetor. Using a small flathead screwdriver, turn the adjustment screw clockwise to increase the carburetor opening at idle, or counterclockwise to decrease the opening. Once the carburetor barrel has been set, retighten the throttle locking collar. Next, check the tension of the throttle return spring. The throttle return spring tension ensures that the carburetor returns to idle when the trigger is in neutral. To check the spring tension, measure the distance between the two throttle locking collars. The distance should be 19 mm or 3/4 of an inch. If the distance requires adjustment, make adjustments using only the inside throttle locking collar by loosening it with the 1.5 mm Allen wrench and sliding it in or out accordingly. Once the correct distance is reached, the collar can be tightened. The last setting to check is the brake setting. Roll the TNX forward to ensure the brake is not dragging or that there isn't excessive trigger movement required to activate the brake. Loosen or tighten the adjusting nut accordingly so that the brake begins to engage within 2 mm of trigger movement. Always turn off the receiver switch first, followed by the transmitter. Now the TNX can be turned off and the air filter can be reinstalled.